All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. So happy that you can be here for this webinar to talk about a great funding opportunity. My name is Ann Avery, and running the show with me is Mariah Skeen from WSU. So together we're going to get through this and hopefully not make too many mistakes, right, Mariah? Although we might make a few.
Yeah.
Just to show we're human. Yes. Yeah. So we have a lot of ground to cover in 60 minutes. We're really happy that you are here with us. And I am going to go ahead and bear with me. I'm going to try to advance the slide. We're going to provide you an overview of a number of topics relative to this funding opportunity with JC Dream. We're going to give you a Materials Washington overview. You'll get a JC Dream overview. We're going to give you some research outcomes. We'll go over dates. We're going to give you an editor's overview and then give you the high points of the grant solicitation and submission elements. Time permitting, we'll have a short Q&A at the end, and then we'll give you the contact information once again as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't think Mel Cosette is with us right now. Mel, if you are here, please jump in. I was informed that she had another meeting or she had a conflict. So I'm going to attempt to fill in for Mel, which is virtually impossible. But for those of you who do know Mel, Mel is the principal investigator and executive director for the Material Science Technology Education Center located at Edmonds College. And MAT EDU is an NSF funded grant focused on technician education, specifically in the area of material science. And MAT EDU is the host for the JC Dream proposals, which is very exciting. And to learn more about MAT EDU, you can go to their website, materialeducation.org. And Mel is also the PI on this particular project. Let's see. So bear with me just one sec. As I said, I'm filling in for Mel. So I'm not going to do as well as she would do, but I'm going to give it my best. First, I'd like to talk to you all about the care, learn, solve approach that we are taking for this particular project. And it's pretty simple. Essentially, we're encouraging people to care about the challenge or the problem that is being addressed. So to have a passionate interest in the issue that is being addressed, to learn about material options and why we need them to embrace solutions and solve these problems with innovative alternatives. So that's kind of the overarching approach that we take with this. Materials Washington obviously has a statewide focus. So it's not limited to just one part of the state or Washington state for that matter. And what is Materials Washington? It's an alliance of community and technical colleges working collaboratively with industry policymakers and professional associations to advance Washington's leadership role in the global materials industry. And I should say community technical colleges and four-year universities as well. And we do this by providing innovative training for students, faculty, and the incumbent workforce using industry-focused curriculum and state-of-the-art technology. Materials Washington was kind of born out of Composites Washington, and we're very excited to be part of this project with JC Dream. As a result of this, we're able to look at a very diverse set of STEM topics, and we have a very strong commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. We know that because when we look at the data, we know our population nationally is changing very rapidly. We know that the demographic in Washington state is changing very rapidly. and it's critical that we outreach to traditionally underinvested, underserved, and underrepresented communities. At this point, Mel would be talking about the funding to support the curriculum development, which we do have through JC Dream. And I'm not going to get into a lot of details about that right now because I don't want to get it wrong, but we do have funding to support up to 6 modules, which you will hear about in just a couple of minutes here. So bear with me, everybody. I'm punting just a little bit. But now I'd like to, before we go on, I think it's really important to have an overview of JC Dream. And I'm really happy that Aaron Fever is on. Aaron is the director for JC Dream, and he's going to provide some great information for all of you. Aaron, if you're ready, and I will advance the slides for you. So just give me the high sign when you'd like me to go to the next slide.
All right, sounds good. Thanks a lot, Ann. Hi, everyone. As Ann said, my name is Aaron, and I just wanted to take a moment to articulate the mission of JC Dream and some of the directions that we're taking things here in the last year or so as relates to the hydrogen economy, which I'll get into in a few minutes. But I first, since I've been in this position and have been explaining to folks what the mission of JC Dream is and what we mean by critical materials and earth abundant materials and why that's important. There's often some confusion, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands what we're aiming for and what we're trying to do within the organization, because it's kind of a nuanced approach to STEM and clean energy and material science. So Ann, why don't you go ahead to the next slide?
Okay, there we go.
So I frequently use this to just illustrate the challenge that we're facing in the field of material science and technology generally. And the cell phone is a really great example of essentially the amount of different kinds of materials that we're using in modern technology. So if you look at that old brick phone from the 1990s, we were really using a very small fraction of the periodic table in that technology from 30 years ago. Now you fast forward to the modern smartphone, and you see that the periodic table has been fully utilized. We're using little bits of all different kinds of elements from all over the periodic table. And you start to notice that you're getting way down into a lot of the rare earth elements, which are shown in that bottom row in blue there. There's a whole lot of precious metals and various things that are much more rare than the technology that was deployed back when we were working on that brick phone. And so this is not just the case in cell phones, it's the case in obviously computers and automobile technology, aerospace, all kinds of different, the entire gamut of technology is utilizing more and more different kinds of materials. And that is becoming an even bigger issue as we think about the clean energy supply chain. And so if you go to the next slide, Ann, I'll illustrate that a little bit. So in clean energy, we have taken another look at the periodic table, and we've identified specific elements that are important for certain parts of the clean energy technology space. So these are divided up. We've got them highlighted in 4 different colors here. I mentioned earlier, if you all wouldn't mind muting unless you're interested in asking a question, which I would love to hear questions. Actually, if you guys want to interrupt me in the middle, that's totally fine. Anyway, so the purple elements shown there are your rare earth elements. You guys have all heard about the rare earth disputes stemming from the China trade war. That was something that China started flexing their muscles back in 2010 and 2012 and caused a pretty big impact to the Japanese industrial base back then. And that's only gotten, we haven't really resolved any of those issues. China dominates the rare earth metals supply chain. And 10 years ago, the main issue was probably electronics, but now one of the biggest impacts is permanent magnet metals like dysprosium and neodymium that are used in electric motors and wind turbines. And so as we see the use of electrification, things like electrifying automotive applications or actuators, all kinds of things like that, you need to rely on those rare earth metals, and we're needing larger and more permanent magnets for those applications. Another one is the battery space. So batteries are shown there in some of the orange colors with the presence of lithium and cobalt. Lithium-ion batteries are what you use in your smartphone and your laptop, but they're also now becoming the primary battery that's used in electric vehicles. And so, of course, the size and volume of batteries that's required is growing drastically. In the case of cobalt, especially, 2/3 of the world's supply of cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is not really the kind of place that folks like Apple and Samsung and Tesla want to be doing business. And it's rife with all kinds of human rights problems, environmental catastrophes related to the mining of cobalt, which has become a very precious commodity. So we see this over and over again. There's those green elements are the photovoltaic elements. So the things that you see in solar panels, you've got gallium and germanium, silver. And then something that we'll get to next is the importance of the precious metals, the platinum group metals, which are crucial for the hydrogen economy or production of alternate fuels. So palladium, ruthenium, iridium, these are all elements that are present in fuel cells and electrolyzers that are used to produce green hydrogen from renewable power and water. So these are the elements that we focus on most in JC Dream, because JC Dream is specifically focused on addressing the clean energy and transportation technology space and making sure that as we accelerate clean energy and we grow the applications of that into the transportation sector, that we keep an eye on that supply chain and make sure that we're not creating problems elsewhere in the world as we're trying to extract those mineral assets. Okay, next slide, please. So as that's a really big space. We had all of clean energy, we have all of the transportation applications. It's kind of challenging to tackle all of that. And so JC Dream has taken a closer look at where that landscape intersects with Washington State and our Washington State, the things that we have expertise on, the areas where it's important to the Washington State economy. And we've kind of narrowed in on a unique space, which is centered around this new organization that we're getting started called CHARGE, which is the Consortium for Hydrogen and Renewably Generated E-Fuels. So I'll tell you a little bit about that right now. So in Washington State, we get our power from a lot of the same places that everybody else in the rest of the world does. We have electric power, we have liquid fuels like gasoline and diesel, and we have natural gas. And so that's where the current grid comes from. And if you go to the next slide, Anne, we'll see that in Washington State, we're really lucky that power grid is actually extremely clean. We have a huge amount of hydropower, and then we have renewables like wind and solar that are already deployed, and in some cases even augmented with battery energy storage. And so we can deliver one of the cleanest power grids in the country to supply things like, electric vehicles, manufacturing, residential data centers, and even in certain cases, some things like electric aviation or electric ships and trucking applications. So, but we're still relying very heavily on those liquid fuels. And so in the orange and the green, you're seeing the use of those liquid fuels, which is where a huge amount of our carbon emissions come from in the state of Washington. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we have an opportunity to try to capture those carbon emissions. Sorry, my phone is ringing. Turn that baby off. Okay. And so what we're aiming to do with CHARGE is utilize that highly green and clean power grid that we have and utilize the situations where we have excess electricity in certain cases to create clean hydrogen or green hydrogen. So you can see that down here in the bottom where we can use this clean power grid that we have to produce hydrogen. So electrolyzers are a good example. There's been a large deployment of hydrogen up out in the Columbia River where we want to produce green hydrogen using hydroelectric power, and we can do that in a number of other cases. Furthermore, if we are able to capture carbon from the atmosphere through either plant-based technologies where plants will absorb CO2 from the atmosphere, and then we can turn that into biofuels, or direct carbon capture, we can combine hydrogen that we've produced using renewable electricity and carbon that we want to prevent from being emitted in the atmosphere, and we can actually produce hydrocarbons. We can produce things like gasoline or diesel. We can actually produce gasoline or diesel, but you could also produce things like methanol or ethanol. You could produce formic acid or ammonia, different chemicals that can be used as fuels to augment that liquid fuel and gaseous fuel based system. Renewable natural gas is another one when you think about gas fuels. And if you go to the next slide, and you'll see again that these kinds of things rely very heavily on critical materials. And so I kind of talked about that earlier. We've got the different elements that are related to all these technologies shown in different spaces. But what we're aiming to do when you look at the ability of Washington State to deploy a green hydrogen economy, and you look at the challenges of creating fuels for our heavy duty transportation sector, we have both the solution with all of our extra green energy and renewable electricity, as well as fresh water. We have an amazing ability to create green hydrogen in this state. We also have a transportation sector, including maritime, aerospace with the presence of Boeing and the whole aerospace supply chain here, and heavy duty trucking with the presence of PACCAR and giants, e-commerce giants like Amazon that rely heavily on all of these modes of transportation. Our economy in Washington State is heavily dependent on successful decarbonization of that heavy duty transportation sector. And it's just not something that we can do very easily with electric drive, with battery technology and electric motors. So we're going to require that hydrogen economy to be successful here in the state of Washington. And we're trying to enable that through this CHARGE organization. So anyway, I say all of that, none of that was related to education, but if you think about this economy is really just getting started and it's growing rapidly, and there's going to be a huge demand for the scientists, engineers, and technicians of tomorrow to be smart in the ways of that specific economy and the technologies that we need to deploy and in the materials that are used in that space. And so it's really important that we invest now in the workforce and training and education to really tackle those challenges and make sure that our workforce, that's coming 10, 20 years from now is going to be prepared for that new economic space, because we're going to be getting our energy from a whole variety of different places, and that's really what we're trying to do here with Materials Washington. So that's all I have for now, and I'll hand it back to you, Anne.
Aaron, thank you so much. I think that was just the perfect kind of level set or context for the remainder of the presentations. I mean, I think as you all heard, what Aaron presented to you all really directly relates to workforce development and technician education and training. And to provide a bit more context around that, Patricia Townsend's going to share some research outcomes with us regarding material science needs in our state. Patricia, are you ready to go?
Yes, thank you, Anne.
You bet.
So I'm Patricia Townsend. I'm from Washington State University. I'm an extension specialist, and I had met Aaron in 2019. And that's when JC Dream was just starting. I had been working in the field of bioenergy on a large research project. And so there was definitely overlap in terms of what I had been doing and also the vision of JC Dream. And JC Dream funded me to do some work with the faculty at the community and technical colleges across the state. And what I ended up doing was I did surveys of faculty at the colleges, as well as I did some interviews and focus groups. And this was across the state of Washington. And what I found was there was definite interest in terms of having more curriculum that was ready and easy for them to use, that focused on material science issues. You know, they wanted ready-made Canvas modules. They wanted things that were easy to integrate into an existing course they already had. So this is a great opportunity if faculty are already teaching a course and you're finding, you know, it would be great if I had a module on X. Well, this is an opportunity for you to get paid to develop that material. And having these materials and exercises available to faculty across the state so that they can be widely used. You know, most people thought that would be extremely helpful. I know one thing that faculty mentioned to me was that funding was often a challenge for them. So this is a way for you to get paid to do this work. So I put my email address on there. If you have any questions specifically about this work that I did, please be in touch with me, and I'll turn it back over to Anne.
Patricia, thank you so much. And I should say that everybody's going to be on for the remainder of the webinar, so that if you have questions, we can cover those during the Q&A. I would also encourage you to put questions in chat as you're thinking about them as well. A couple of quick housekeeping items. We will make this PowerPoint available to everybody attending today as a PDF file. And then Mariah, is it possible, I know we're recording today's webinar, is it possible to post this to the JC Dream site so that we can share that link with folks that might not have been able to attend today?
Yep, I will be posting this recording to the JC Dream website, specifically on the Materials Washington RFP page.
Awesome, thank you so much. That's fantastic. And now just a little bit about my role. I'm a co-PI on this project with Mel, which means essentially I'm going to lead the proposal process, and I'll explain what that means. It's a little more, it's not what it sounds like, but we'll be handling the logistical side of things. And we'll get into that detail here in just a moment. But when you put together your submissions, they'll be coming to me. I'll be the person convening the review committee. I'll be interfacing with Mel and Aaron and Mariah and Kathy on things. So I'll be handling kind of the nuts and bolts part of this. And in my day job, I'm director for the Center of Excellence for Marine Manufacturing and Technology. And as Aaron said so well just a moment or two ago, this is, you know, JC Dream is addressing critical material issues across industry sector, and the maritime sector is no stranger to that. So it's really fun to be part of this project. And we're one of 11 centers statewide, each hosted by a particular community or technical college with a program in that specific industry sector, which is why I'm at Skagit Valley College. And like I said, I'm the co-PI on the project as well. So I'm going to start sharing some information with you about solicitation, the proposal structure, guidelines, word counts, the submission and review process. And before I get to that, I want to go over some important dates. All of these dates are important, but I'm going to focus on 4 right now that are highlighted in green. One, if you decide to submit a proposal, which we absolutely hope that you do, proposals are due by December 10, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We will notify everybody of their status by the middle of January, specifically January 7. Then we'll have support and development time with all of you January through April. We're going to get to Tom in just 1 second, and he's going to talk a little bit about that. And then May 6, 2022 is the final date for submission of the modules. So we want to have all of this work wrapped up by May 6, 2022. And again, you'll get this with you. See, you'll get this following the presentation today. So you'll have a full listing of all of these important dates. I just wanted to key in on those 4. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tom Stobbe, and Tom is our editor. He is a critical link in this project. And Tom, are you ready for me to turn it over to you to provide an overview of what you'll be doing?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
So my name's Tom Stobbe. I'm a retired professor of material science and engineering from the University of Washington. And I've been working with the MatEd project for quite some time now. We have collected a whole variety of these educational modules, which are basically lessons, and we're looking for more. And JC Dream is helping us in that regard. The back, a couple slides back is the main website for materials for the MatEd project. It's materialseducation.org. And you see in the second bullet here, that's the connection to the list, to the template that you would use. I think, however, it's better to go to materialseducation.org, and if you click on over on the right-hand side of that home page, a little down a little bit, you'll get to MatEDU modules. There are about 150 of them. And since there's quite a few, it can give you a good idea as to what they need to look like. And I should say that on whatever topic you decide on, there may be other modules on the same topic that are listed there. Don't worry about that. Yours will probably be better. So, and people are always looking for the best modules. So these modules are used by teachers from middle school up through community and technical colleges. So you can judge them for whatever level that you want. They could be any place in that list. If you look at on the website, if you have the materials MatEDU module page up, then you'll see that there's a search engine, and the search engine divides the modules by introductory, intermediate, or advanced. The introductory would be something you could use in middle school up through high school. Intermediate would be high school. Advanced could be high school tech course or community college or technical college. But any and all of those can be used any place you need to in your curriculum. I've used these ideas in kindergarten, and I use them in my college classes. That's the best way to figure out what sort of thing we're talking about. These are just lessons, and you need to write them up so that other people can use them. That's what you're doing. We're going to publish these, and so they'll be available to the world. Now that's important to know, because the two principal review criteria are, one, that we have good science, and two, that it's written in such a way that another educator with a general science background could actually do it. And that's important. So you have to judge on the way you write this thing to make sure that it's easy to follow, define what your goals are and all that kind of stuff. Now, so they're published for the world to see. What we prefer to do is copyright them. Your school can copyright them. Edmonds College can provide a copyright. I can give you the details on that later. But it also means that since you're copyrighted, you can't use other copyrighted material that somebody else may have published. That really means that you can't use figures that you take out of a book, for example, because those are copyrighted. You can redraw figures, that's no problem. You can take your own photographs, that's fine. You can do videos, that kind of stuff, but you can't copy other people's material. That's important. So when you put together your proposal, it goes through Ann's review process. And when you're told that you are accepted, your proposal is accepted, that'll be in January, then I can be available to help you put together the proposal. I'll be happy to do that. I can review an outline. I can review a draft. I'd be happy to do those kinds of things. The timing here is really important too. January to April, it's really not 3 months, it's 6 weeks. And I say that because when you submit this to me, I have to have it reviewed. I send it out for a third party to review it. And I've got to have those reviews back before the final date, which is April 15th. Because if there are corrections or comments that could help your module, then I can send those to you from the reviewer. So I wouldn't count on April 15th. I'd say you got to get that done by March 15th. So I'm here to help. You have my email address right there. You can always ask me questions, and I'll be around later for the Q&A. So that's all I have to say right now. Thanks a lot.
Tom, thank you so much. Tom is such an incredible resource to this project and really will be instrumental as you're developing your modules. We are getting some great comments and questions in chat. Please pay attention to that, and we'll get to some of that during the Q&A. I'm going to fly through some of these slides because I want to be timely, but I'm going to cover the high-level solicitation and proposal elements. So as you know, JC Dream and Matt EDU are announcing a request for proposals to support the creation of instructional modules that address earth abundant materials, critical materials, and supply chain issues for each, such as human or environmental impact, critical material solutions like recycling or reduction in the use of critical materials. This is a fairly broad statement. We really do encourage creativity, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have about that. But in a nutshell, that's what we're looking for. I'm going to keep going here. And so I want to talk a little bit about the elements of the solicitation. So the successful proposals will address challenges articulated by the following JC Dream objectives. I'm going to focus on the fourth one, but please read the other ones. The fourth one, conducting educational outreach concerning earth abundant materials, solutions, and critical materials issues to students, educators, the general public, policymakers, legislators, and industry decision makers. The other three elements, clean energy, the connection to research industry and government around JC Dream issues, the promotion, facilitation, and funding of research are all part of the mix. But really, we're talking about educational outreach here. And all of this information is located on the RFP site in great, great detail. I'm taking the high level stuff and sharing this with you today. If you're going to consider submitting an application in response to the RFP, I will say what I say to everybody about anybody submitting an RFP for anything. Read everything at least twice, make sure that you have a clear understanding of what we're asking for, and please don't hesitate to ask us questions. I really encourage that. So I want to talk about the solicitation elements. And Mel's back on with me. So Mel, correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, but we anticipate awarding making 6 awards this year. Awards are $2,500 per curriculum module. You may apply for a maximum of 2 modules at $2,500 per module for a total funding request of $5,000. Mel, did I get that right? Is it up to 6 this year?
That is correct. We're very excited about that.
Awesome, thank you. And then as Tom said, and I mentioned as well, we have a period of performance. We have hard deadlines. So the final modules do need to be submitted no later than May 6th, 2022. The template can be found at the website listed following here. I'm not going to read that off. Nobody wants me to do that. But you can go directly to the site. And there was a great question in chat about utilizing Canvas. So I've been saving the chat and we'll send that out along with the PDF as well. A very important note about financial issues. A lot of us are used to indirect costs with any kind of a grant that we might be working with. There is no indirect here. That's very, very important. The funds are specifically restricted to the creation of the instructional module. And there will be a personal service contract directly with the proposer, excuse me, issued through Edmonds College. And that's how we will compensate for that work, but there is no indirect. That's really important to understand. Who may apply? Well, I think all of you on the webinar today, obviously, we're really looking for folks that have the skills, knowledge, and resources to develop instructional modules from the 2-year system, the 4-year system, from K-12. As I said earlier, we really want to represent communities that have been underinvested and underrepresented. That's very important. So we're really trying to grow that cohort out as well, but we encourage everybody to consider this and to apply. Next, we're going to go over the key application elements. And again, the full document can be found at this website. And Mariah's been doing a wonderful job of keeping that up to date. So all of the information that you'll need will be there, but I'm going to go through these elements with you right now. Obviously, we want to know about your project team, the name of your organization and your collaborators, and the lead proposer needs to be identified. That's absolutely critical. And then we've created elements of the application that will be weighted. And for purposes of review, we limit, obviously, with everything, we've got a word count. The word counts really will count. I promise you that. We're going to ask you to describe the module. That's a 400 word count maximum. We'll ask you to talk about impact and merit. That's 500 words max. The module is 400. I might have misstated that. We'll ask you to describe how your module aligns with JC Dream objectives. This is a 200 word maximum area. And if you have questions about those objectives, you want to learn more about those, please go to the JC Dream site. You'll have a link here in the PowerPoint that you're going to get telling you about JC Dream, a message from the director, and the JC Dream strategy. We'll also ask you to tell us a bit more about your team and your collaboration. We really place a high value on and encourage collaboration. That's really important. And that's a 300 word maximum section. Please take the word counts seriously. They will all be reviewed. And if you go over, then your submission is going to be out of compliance. The deadlines, again, it's December 10 at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Please submit your proposals directly to me. at ann.avery, and remember the Avery is A-V-A-R-Y, not E-R-E-R-Y as commonly spelled, at skagit.edu. Once I receive your proposal, I will respond and give you an acknowledgement email so that you will know that the proposal was received, and we'll put a time date stamp on it. You all will be notified of the status of your proposal by the middle of January. We've targeted January 7th for that. If you have questions regarding the financial part of it, the fiduciary dealings, please contact Mel about this. And that's mel.cossette, C-O-S-S-E-T-T-E @edcc.edu. Mel, is that correct, or should it now be edmonds.edu?
It is now edmonds.edu.
Okay, so I'll make that correction on here so that everybody has the updated email address. And then if you have other general questions regarding your proposal or submission, please contact me again at ann.avery@skagit.edu. And then we are going to convene a proposal review committee, and this is what we did last year. We are giving, we did this last year as well. We developed a scoring rubric. So this is how it breaks down. Your alignment to JC Dream objectives is worth 20 points, or up to 20 points. Collaboration and team is worth up to 10 points. Impact and merit, excuse me, are worth up to 40 points. And then your module description, sustainability, and dissemination plan are worth up to 30 points. And if my math is correct, that should be 100 points. Now, a couple of things about compliance, and this makes me the person that's no fun in the group, but I'll take it. I'm happy to take any questions you have about a proposal, or if you wanted to run an idea past us, we can do that. But we will not do previews. We won't review a full or partial proposal in advance. We won't do that. We want to have a completely transparent process. If we reviewed proposals either in whole or in part in advance, that would immediately compromise the transparency and integrity of the process, and we can't do that. But again, we will respond to questions addressing potential module concepts, and we do encourage creativity. Once again, I know this is redundant, but sometimes redundancy is really good. Submit your proposals to me. I will send you an email acknowledgement with the time and date stamp. Proposals are due December 10 by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then again, everybody will be notified no later than January 7 of the status of their proposal. And now we're going to open it up to Q&A. So there's a couple of
Hey, Anne,
Go
this
ahead,
is
Mel.
Mel. Hey, I have answered some of them in the chat since I apologize for being a little late. I got pulled into an NSF meeting this morning, and so sorry about that. But I've been answering some of the questions online, so in the chat. But one thing that I think we want to be very clear on, and Tom, maybe you can help me with this, is that when we say a module isn't a complete curriculum from September to June. It can be a very simple concept that can maybe be taught in an hour. We're trying to also get into the high schools and having them use them. And when they're connected to 50-minute segments and 50-minute sessions or class times, it's very difficult to do a very long module for them. So Tom, do you want to talk about that a little bit? I know we really had a lot of discussions about this when we first started. You're muted, Tom. Tom, you're muted.
Oh, Tom, this is Ann. If you can hear me, can you take yourself off mute?
That'll help.
There. Thank you.
So I call them lessons. They're really just lessons that you use in one class period, maybe two. There are some labs that people submit that might take a lab session plus a class session. There are modules that are done in the classroom, but there are some modules that you cannot do in the classroom. Classrooms don't usually have fume hoods, for example. And so I'm familiar with a lot of modules that you do outside. Just because of that reason, you want to do the module, but you don't have a fume hood, you do it out in the patio outside in school. And then when the principal calls you into the office, you just tell them to call me. That's very simple. So we're talking about 1 day, 2 days max sort of lessons. Is that clear?
Yeah, because we're trying to increase interest, like what Aaron was talking about when he was doing his presentation, is increasing the interest of why should we care about what we're doing, and what are we learning about what is happening in this, whatever it is, module, and then how do we have a solution for it? You know, that's kind of like our format or our thinking process. So I think that really does help. To realize that it's not a full curriculum we're looking for. We're looking for something that complements. And the other thing I think that we want to share is that if you have an idea or you have a really good module that you've used with your students, and if by adding a few elements or a few parts and pieces, it could really meet this criteria, this need that we're looking for, and some of the things that Aaron highlighted earlier, and some of the other things that you see on the JC Dream and Materials Washington side, then you can use that too. I think Bartholomew asked the question, due to circumstances, you know, he created one, he was going to create one, and he didn't get a chance to due to unforeseen circumstances at his institution. So he's going to resubmit. It was a really good idea and a good module. He just did not have the time and the bandwidth to do it. So I think sometimes people think it's a full curriculum, and it's really not. So thank you, Tom.
Yeah, another point is it's true that the template for Math EDU modules is pretty extensive. The main thing is to get your ideas across. And so that template can be used to make sure that you include all those parts, but it doesn't have to necessarily follow all of them. If it's not applicable to what you're doing, don't use it.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? Go ahead.
Oh, I would just like to follow up with Scott Beckham's question, which I don't think has been addressed yet. Many of us who are faculty were very, very, very busy during the semester, and we have lighter loads during the summer. And it would be much easier for us to create content over the summer months. Is there a specific reason that the deadlines are what they are? Is it possible to extend the deadlines a little bit into summer? I just wanted to second that question.
I think there's a couple of reasons why that was selected. And Aaron, if you want to jump in a little bit here, we had originally planned in a couple of times to do a face-to-face symposium and invite the authors to come and talk about their work. That was originally planned for March. And the way to get people to come and talk about their modules was to do it in that time frame. The other piece is that the fiscal calendar makes it a little difficult when we cross over two fiscal periods. So it is easier, and again, it's maybe not as easy for faculty, but it gives us time to be able to close out the fiscal period and start a new one without messing anybody's contracts up, which can happen. I've seen that happen before. So the other thing is when Tom and I did in the past do many things during the summer, we found that the rush came in September to get it done. And not to say it was here good, bad, or indifferent. It was just, enjoying your summer is really what we would like you to do, which is one of the reasons why Anne and Aaron and I have pushed to have this in October or November, this solicitation rollout. So we give you more time to do it. We give you additional time to prepare your module. If you've already got it started, that's even better. But I do understand the time constraints. Aaron, do you want to talk about anything on that?
Yeah, I think I appreciate the question, Gordon and Scott as well. I think, you know, we should talk about it, Mel. I think it's something that you and I have talked about before in the past,
Mhm.
wanting to make sure that this works for our content creators and
Mhm.
that we have good traction and lots of folks able to contribute. So
Absolutely.
I think we probably could figure out a way to work around any of the contracts and fiscal year issues. And so I think what, you know, we're well into this process for this year, but let's definitely revisit that and see if it might make sense to adjust our
Mhm.
the timing of our process. I hear you on not wanting it to come down to the wire at the end of September. And part of the goal here, I think, would be to have content ready for the beginning of a school year. But at the same time, we're trying to gradually accumulate content over,
Mhm.
you know, many funding cycles, so that year after year we gradually have more and more of it that's relevant,
Mhm.
fresh material.
Mhm.
So I guess let's
Yeah.
the feedback is definitely valid, and we hear you. And so let's see if
Mhm.
there's anything that we can do, Mel, going forward to
Mhm.
make sure this works for the folks who are doing the work here.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. I think it's worth discussing.
Great.
I would also like to I think, Jim, if you're still on, yeah, I think you are. You shared some really good two items in the chat. Do you want to explain what those two, how those two relate? It might help rather than just describing
Sure.
those.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this is Jim Jensen. I'm part of the WSU Energy Program in Olympia, and we run the state's Green Transportation Program, which really serves public fleets throughout Washington. But we have a part of this program that focuses on communities as well. And we were getting a lot of questions about materials use in electric transportation, electric vehicles, electric vehicle batteries. So we produced this fact sheet to provide some real basic information that fleet operators could share with their decision makers to make them better aware of where things sort of stand currently with battery technology, how it's changing. There are lots of innovations happening in batteries now, and a lot more emphasis on battery reuse and battery recycling. So that was just an attempt we made to kind of address some of these issues in EVs. We're also equally focused on all the zero emission vehicles, including fuel cell vehicles that use renewable hydrogen. The other part I would say is that it hasn't become a focus yet, but it's part of something that we have as our more of a goal for the future, is to be more involved in workforce development. There are lots of changes happening here. So we did some research about workforce issues related to the electrification of transportation. That's on our website also. And we just see that there are some great opportunities to prepare students at different levels for this new future. It's coming rapidly. And I know that our fleet folks are very concerned about making sure that people who come into the field are better prepared. So we have some content expertise. We very much are not curricula developers, or that's not where our experience lies. But if folks would like to work with us, I'd like to hear from you.
Sounds like a great opportunity. Thank you, Jim. Back to you, Anne.
Thanks, Mel. Does anybody, we've got just a few more minutes, and I'm going to ask if there are any other questions, because I want to give Aaron a chance to provide any last thoughts he might have. But does anybody else have any questions? Going once, going twice. And if you think of something after the fact, please send it in and we'll get the question routed appropriately. I'm also saving the chat and we'll format that for you. So we'll send that out along with the PDF of the PowerPoint. And then, as Mariah said, we'll have the recording of this webinar posted on the RFP page on the JC Dream site. But we've got about 4 minutes left. I like to end on time. We promised you would end at 11. But Aaron, I wanted to throw it back to you. Are there any other ideas or thoughts you'd like to share before we close it out?
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, no, I think we covered it all pretty well. I just want to certainly open up the conversation, you know, to you all. And if there's questions that you have, or you want to reach out between now and the proposal deadline, you know, we're pretty open to that. I'd like to make sure I can't advise people on, you know, what to do, obviously, because it's a competitive proposal process, but would like to clarify any questions that anybody has and you know, help you guys make sure that this is, you know, meeting what we're after. So, and yeah, I think that's probably all I've got.
Awesome.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Got about another minute if you have a question. All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Hey,
Thank
you all
you.
so much. Again, don't forget to reach out to us if you have questions, as Aaron said. We really appreciate you being here today. This is a very exciting project with JC Dream, and we look for this to grow in the coming years. So it's a tremendous opportunity for our system. But again, here's our contact information with any, if you have questions beyond that. Thank you to everybody for being here today.
Thank you.